Good evening, to one and all.
Okay, fine. Go ahead.
Energy, what do you mean by that? How can we conserve it? And how do we start? These are some of the questions that cross our mind when we hear about energy conservation. Synergy to Save Energy is a webinar in an attempt to clear these doubts and think effectively. Also, to learn from our experts how we can adapt to a sustainable life. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to today's webinar. Our esteemed speakers are from Petroleum Conservation Research Association, PCRA, under Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. It would be my privilege to introduce our speakers to you all. Let me start by welcoming our first speaker, Mr. Prakash Rao. Mr. J. Prakash Rao is an empaneled faculty of Petroleum Conservation Research Association under the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas since 2009. He has spoken on energy conservation and energy efficiency, efficient motors in several webinars organized by PCRA, that is International Copper Promotion Council of India, Institute of Engineers, Engineer Staff College of India, Manipal Institute of Technology, large and medium scale industries, and several educational institutions. He has retired from Siemens Limited, a multinational electrical engineering company, from their motor divisions after serving 37 years. He will be speaking on the topic Energy from Waste. We welcome you, sir. Mr.
Thank
Dheeraj
you.
Bhaskar is our next speaker. A postgraduate in chemical engineering from IIT Delhi after graduation from NIT Trichy. Worked with Indian Oil Corporation for 15 years, followed by 10 years with private company. In 2003, started a consultancy company dealing with energy conservation. Had been an external faculty for PCRA since 2007, spreading the awareness of energy conservation in industries and to the youth sector. He has conducted numerous such programs to the senior management staff as well as the workmen of industries and to the students of numerous universities and colleges. He'll be addressing on the topic Global Energy Scenario and Conservation of Energy at Home. We welcome you, sir. I would like to mention that you can put your doubts in the chat box
Thank
or
you.
unmute yourselves and ask at the end of the session. I hope that this webinar brings a guiding light in all our lives and we make the best use of this valuable time. On to you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Bhaskar, you can start now.
Okay. Thank you, Shraddha. Okay, fine. Thank you, Mr. Prakash Rao. Thank you, Shraddha. It's nice to see about more than 30 when the sun is setting, that is the solar energy is going down. Okay, I will, the structure of our talk will be like this. I will first give briefly for say 3 or 4 minutes about PCRA, that is the organization which is sponsoring this event today. And then Mr. Prakash Rao will talk about waste to energy, how to convert waste to energy. Then I will come again on board and I will share with you some tips about how to conserve energy at homes or in your colleges or in your day-to-day life. Okay, now before I come again to talk to you about those points, first you have to understand why you should conserve energy now. Okay, before that I'll tell you about PCRA briefly. PCRA is Petroleum Conservation Research Association. It's a body under Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. It is under Government of India. Now, why government is taking all these pains to spread this awareness of energy conservation is that we have started depending on this oil too much. That is, If you think of a day, you are using petroleum product right from the time you get up and right to the time you go to your bed in some form or other. For example, for your moving here and there, you use petrol and diesel. And you use plastics on so many places. Plastic is the starting point. Similarly, point by point, there are about 40 to 50 products from petroleum, that is crude oil, which you are using day in and day out. Now, since we are depending on it for so much, we are concerned it's not going to last forever. This is a non-renewable form of energy. So as of today, the calculation says that it is going to last for another, say, 40 years or so. Afterwards, how will you manage? So the next generations are going to find it difficult. So the government is concerned that the awareness has to be spread, and this 40 years we want to elongate, say to say 42 years or so, whatever it is. Okay. In the meantime, the scientists and researchers will find alternative sources of energy. The main idea is that we want to shift from non-renewable form of energy to renewable form of energy. Today we are depending more on, say, oil, coal, gas, and nuclear. We are depending more than 60 to 65% on these four. All these are non-renewable form of energy. Say hydel and solar to some extent, small extent. But we want to go to a period where we want to depend mainly on, say, hydel, solar, wind, plus small amounts on biofuels and tidal fuels and geothermal and all those. But we want to depend entirely on renewable form of energy. That is the basic idea. So we want to spread this awareness of conservation to extend the life of the present source of energy. So that is the importance of today's lecture. So you please gather some points, and government cannot do it alone. No one can do it alone. The entire population has to contribute towards it. How you can contribute is what we are trying to tell you today. Now I have told you why you should do it. Mr. Prakash will tell some source of this thing, waste, which can be converted to energy, which will replace the energy which we get today from oil. Okay, now I will hand over the platform to Mr. Prakash Rao for about half an hour, and I will come back to you with some more tips on how to conserve energy. Over to Mr. Prakash Rao.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Prakash Rao here. I worked with Siemens Limited for 37 years, and my core subject while in service was motors, in addition to switchgear and fuse gear. So, not touching upon that subject, today I'll be talking to you about conserving energy, and one of the sources, as Mr. Bhaskar said, of renewable energy, that is waste, which we normally throw it out. How can we utilize that? This is my subject, and I will just put on the PPT presentation. Give me 2 minutes. Okay, can you see the presentation now, Mr. Bhaskar? Hello? Okay, so welcome again. to the webinar
Sir, we
on
can see it,
energy
sir.
conservation. Today's topic is waste to energy, or it is abbreviated as capital W, small t, and capital E. That is waste to energy. Okay. Now, what is waste to energy? It is a process of generating energy in form of electricity or heat, and in the process, you utilize the waste to convert it into a source of fuel. So this simply, it means we are using the waste to create energy. Now what is waste? Waste is nothing but rubbish, refuse, garbage, junk, unwanted material that is thrown in the dustbins or elsewhere, which is collected and taken to a garbage dump. The waste is nothing but all this collection of these unwanted things. So we have this waste collected from households, industries, agriculture sector, fisheries, and many more. I've listed here only the top 4 contributors of waste. So most of the waste comes from household. Around 28% of the waste consists of paper and board. Around 14% food scraps, which you get from canteens, hotels, and other food joints. 14% from yard trimmings. Yard trimming is from a garden, from the footpath where the leaves are shredded from the trees. Around 13% or 12% from plastics. 9% consist of metals. Around 8% rubber, leather, textiles. Around 6% is wood. Around 4% glass, and around 3.4% others. So around 70% of the waste is generated from paper, food, garden waste, and plastics. Remaining 30% comes from metals, rubber, wood, and glass. And so most of this, if you see, the paper, food, scrap, garden trimming, all come from our homes. If we start segregating this waste at home, from the, as municipalities or BBMP promote, saying that segregate your waste into wet waste and dry waste, the dry waste can be easily converted into energy. Now, the waste normally, I have already said this, again I'm repeating this, these are nothing but oil waste, land, your old furniture, industrial sludge, plastics, tires, rubber, styrofoam, old unwanted appliances, paints, oily contaminated liquid, all these contribute to the waste. Now, approximately 1 kg of waste is generated by every individual daily. The total waste generated in India, in city, that is in urban city, is around 68.8 million tons per year. It's a huge amount of waste. It's a municipal waste. I'm not talking about the rural part of it, which is still more. So around 68.8 million tons per year is the waste which is generated. Now, where do we keep this waste? How do we store this waste? Or is it this waste a really waste which cannot be utilized? What municipality does is they go and dump it out of the city limits. And all the pits, landfills, pits are filled up, and it's called as landfill. It's just filled up wherever there are open space. But how we do not have that much space available for filling this up. Just filling up doesn't help in any way other than contaminating the place and polluting the atmosphere there. And if people are staying around, it causes diseases to those people. So how to make the best use of the waste, which will be advantageous to human beings. Now, and what is the use of it? The use is, and how we can overcome the problem. First is, we can overcome the problem of energy crisis. As Mr. Bhaskar said, we utilize the natural resources to generate electricity or energy. Like we use coal, we use gas, we use petrol to generate electricity in thermal stations. Now, by using this waste, we can use this waste which is thrown away. It helps us in controlling our climate, environmental problems, and also health issues. Now, as I said earlier, municipality disposes the waste by filling up the vacant land, and this can be used to generate electricity. Now, waste is dumped in the disused open pits called landfills and then covered by soil. This does not solve the problem. It only increases the problem, because this waste, when decomposed, produces gases that are often burned to generate power, or it produces a lot of toxic chemicals which are let out in the atmosphere. So, though it is a very cheap solution for waste disposal, the disposal method adapted, there are better ways of doing it. And not only that, it gives a very bad look or ugly look when it is filled up. It is just dumped there, and sometimes it is covered, sometimes, most of the time, it's not covered. So it gives, it causes air pollution. The gases that are released causes air pollution, and which add to the global warming. The seepages from this landfill through the underground goes into the streams of the nearby water source, and it pollutes the local water. So that is another disadvantage of this landfill. So in Bangalore, approximately 5,000 tons of waste is generated daily. A huge amount of, and this needs to be carried all the way from the city to outskirts of the city, where the landfill is. Yes, ma'am. At present, this garbage has very high caloric value, and it may cause fire accidents. So you might have heard the landfills normally have fire accidents. It is very difficult for it to get extinguished. So it produces nitrous oxide at the dumping yard, which is we are not able to control. And it contributes around 179 times. It has 179 times more global warming than carbon dioxide. This is a source from World Health Organization. Then what is the alternative? The alternative is to generate electricity from the waste instead of just leaving it at the dump yard or at the landfill. Now, there's something called refuse derived fuel, or RDF, which is in form of pellets. This waste can be converted into pellets or refuse derived fuel, RDF. Now, this is a very high combustible, high caloric value fuel, which is about 2,500 kilojoules per kilogram, which can be used to convert waste into steam energy, which again can be converted into electrical energy. Instead of burning the precious coal, which is a natural resource and non-renewable, this renewable waste can be converted into electricity by converting it to RDF. And it has more caloric value. This are normally fed into the incinerators. The incinerator generates 1.5 megawatts of power by processing 600 tons per day of waste. 600 tons if we have, we can generate 1.5 megawatt of power. So it costs about 17 crores per megawatt plant. So if you want to put 1 megawatt plant, it costs about 17 crores. So by utilizing this 600 tons per day waste, the remaining waste is only 5%. And it's a very low rate of emission is released into the atmosphere. So atmosphere is more or less clear, waste is reduced, and it reduces the fire accidents that normally happens at the landfill areas. So this RDF is utilized to generate power, and the process is very simple. So if you see this picture, which I'm showing you now, the tripping floor, the lorries dump the wastage into a pit where it is separated, the glass is separated, and the recycled with the metals which can be recycled is segregated. Then it is ignited the fuel that is, the gas that is generated is converted into hydrochloric acid and sulfur. And again, the fuel gas is sent to the gas turbine. The steam that comes out from the incinerator is fed into the steam turbine, and it's converted into electricity. Then we have this option of getting desalinization. We get distilled water. So you can see the waste is converted into chemicals as well as electricity. This process of generating electric power is from the same amount of fuel compared to direct combustion. The process generates more electric power from the same amount of fuel. That means you get more benefit by generating electricity from the waste than what you get from the normal coal burning. So, and due to this, as the ash is separated from the fuel, the temperature is quite high. Because it's quite high, we get the steam at a very local. Corporations don't ask for more land to fill up the waste. So with the available land, you can utilize for more landfills, and then more electricity can be generated. So RDF is one of the green fuel, which is a renewable source, which reduces our dependence on petrol. And it also reduces the risk that you get associated with landfill, like fire accidents, etc. The disadvantage is very expensive. The incinerator, as I said earlier, is quite expensive to put, and it requires a skilled labor to maintain this incinerators. Last point, if the country can generate electricity by using these technologies, then it is one of the best economical problem to solve the waste generated in our country. So this is how I conclude. Thank you very much. Bhaskar, you can take over.
Thank you, Mr. Prakash Rao.
Yeah.
Hope that topic of waste to energy doesn't go
waste
on in mind, and hope a time will come when you will be in a position to utilize this technology. And the technology which Mr. Prakash Rao discussed with not yet to be implemented on a large scale in this country now, because like he said, it is in a stage where it is quite costly. Okay, now I will start my session of how to conserve energy at your home and your college, in your hostels and all. Okay, I will just start with my PowerPoint presentation. Please tell me when you are able to see it.
Yes, sir, we can see.
You can see. Shall I? Okay, shall I start? What you can see is the topics which I am going to cover. I am audible, no? The audio is clear.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Now I will first start with fuel savings in driving, which you will be doing quite a lot, two-wheelers or cars or whatever. Then I will go to the cooking part of it, which also maybe as long as you are in college or in the hostel, you will not be utilizing, but the moment you step out of your hostels and all, the situation may come where you have to use these things, cookings and all. Then I will talk about the home appliances. Okay. First, driving. I will be say about a dozen points in that, and if you are able to follow it, the total saving which you can do is about 20%. It looks very huge actually, but you won't believe, like simple things like good driving habits and good cooking habits and good industrial operating practices will leads to a lot of savings actually. It doesn't need a very high-tech, say, hi-fi investment or hi-fi machines to bring about improvements. Simple. First thing is awareness, which is what we are trying to create today. First thing is you have to know why you are doing it, why you should do it. Then you have to, we are giving some tips of how to do it. So then, the next point which it says is that the potential of saving is 70% with the driver and 30% is with the mechanics, because maintenance also plays a very role in the conservation of it. So drivers play a more important role by the driving habits. So the first point is that speed. That is, you are to drive between 45 to 55 kilometers per hour. That is average of about 50 kilometers per hour is the speed at which your fuel. Many of you will laugh at this speed actually, because you will be thinking of going at say 80, 90, 100 and all those things. But in your youth, yes, you have to do it, enjoy it and all those things. But keep in mind that you are burning more fuel whenever you are crossing this 50 kilometers per hour speed. And you are burning the fuel. And what happens when you burn the fuel is what we have been talking about, that it is leading to economical problem, it is leading to social problem, because the oil life is short now, and it is leading to environmental problem also. Now, the slide says that the faster you go, why you are able to get at this, nothing technical or nothing to do with the engine efficiency, nothing to do with your engine design and all those things. It is basically because of the wind resistance. See, you will feel when you are traveling in a two-wheeler, the wind which is coming and hitting your face goes on increasing as the speed goes on increasing. You just try to hold, say, a kerchief or a paper against your palm. Initially at low speeds, it falls off. It will not stick to your hand. But when you pick up speed, it sticks to your hand, because it is the same system, same two-wheeler, your sitting posture is same, your hand is same, your kerchief is same, but it is able to stick to your hand at higher speeds. It is because of the wind resistance. So that shows the wind resistance plays a very important role. And you can see that you can get 40% of extra mileage if you are able to control the speed of your vehicle. Okay, now the second point which I will be talking is on the keeping your engine healthy. Keeping your engine healthy means, here you have to slightly know about an engine automobile, that you use fuel and you need air, and fuel combines with air and burns, and when it burns, it gives away energy, which energy you will get inside the cylinder, which is converted by connecting rods and gears and all those things to the wheels. Now, keeping the engine healthy means this combination of fuel and air should be very good. If the combination is not good, it will lead to improper combustion. So if you see some of the engines, some of the trucks and those things, it will be belching out black smokes. Why it is happening? Because either the air quantity is low or the mixing is not proper. The mixing happens inside the engine. So how will you ensure that these things are all good? That is, proper amount of fuel, proper amount of air, and proper mixing is there, is by keeping the engine healthy. By keeping the engine healthy means by tuning your engines properly, regularly. it says a delay may prove more expensive in terms of petrol and oil as compared to the cost of the overall itself. Next, I will be talking about driving in the correct gear. See, uh, for each gear, your book, that is the operating manual of the vehicle, would have indicated some speeds. That is, first gear, don't go beyond, say, 10 kilometers. Second gear, don't cross 20. Third gear, don't cross 40. And 40 and above the higher gear. And in the vehicles where you have got 5 gears, you have to go beyond 45 and this input. So follow those driving limits, because when you are driving at the correct gear, you are getting the maximum benefit out of the engine. And another problem if you are driving at an incorrect gear is that your engine shakes more if you are driving at a lower speed than that. It is not that you have to drive at a low speed at all gears, because driving at a lower speed may save you fuel, but because of the shakes of the engines, that wear and tear of the parts will become more, and that will lead to more expenses. So you have to maintain that good gear, good speed limits for each gears. Okay. So that says that 20% of increase in fuel consumption if you drive at the wrong gears. Next point I am talking about is the good braking habits. Here the good braking habits means it is the anticipation. You would have seen many that though we see red light ahead, we don't reduce our speed. We go very near the signal and then apply the brake and reduce the speed. Similarly, if there is some obstruction in the road, say a cattle is crossing, or some crowd has accumulated, or some vehicle has broken down. So there the anticipation comes in, reducing the speed and controlling the speed and then going ahead instead of going very near it and then applying the brakes. Applying the brake is sheer waste of energy. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply brake. Applying the brake means it is a first thing. It is a safety tool. Okay, so cultivate good braking habits by anticipating the obstructions quite in advance. The next point I am talking to you is that keep your foot off the clutch, meaning away from the clutch when you are on a normal running. Clutch should be used only while changing gears or when you are going on a very low speed. See, the top of the clutch is to connect the this energy which you get in the engine to the wheel. That is the job of the clutch. That is in an internal combustion engine, you are through the connecting rod, you generate a rotary motion, and then you connect it to the gears, and then that gets connected to the wheel to a clutch. Suppose you are keeping your foot on a clutch, then you are involuntarily disconnecting the engine from the wheel. And since you are not doing it fully, you are just keeping it as a habit, means it will be partially disconnected. It means clutch is still in touch. So that leads to more wear and tear of the clutch itself, leading to change of clutch plate quite often. And then the energy which you get in the engine is not transmitted to the wheels. So that is an absolute waste of energy. And how is this applicable to the in the two-wheelers? You see many have the habit of just pulling the clutch towards you when riding. That leads to this kind of phenomenon of declutching, partial declutching, which should be avoided. In the two-wheelers where there is no clutch, then this point is not applicable. You cannot do anything with it. Automatic gear takes care of this phenomenon. Next point I am going to talk is this: keeping the air filter clean. Okay, What is the importance of air filter? See, air filter is there to remove the dust which is coming inside through the air. Now you think, what will happen if the dust enters the engine? It's not going to affect you. But since this air is going to enter the cylinder and get combusted, there, that dust which enters the cylinder results in wear and tear of the cylinder linings and cylinder heads. So, which will lead to a leak of that combusted product. See, we are getting this energy in a transport vehicle when when in the airtight atmosphere we are able to convert this combustible products into motion. Now, if you are introducing dust inside the engine, which is leading to the lining to get damaged, then the combustion product leaks through that lining instead of going through the existing exhaust valve. So that is a waste of energy. So that is the importance of this air filter. Normally, these parts are not taken care so frequently, except when you are going to the mechanic and the mechanic talks about it. Air has to be clean is a very, very important point. Next point I am going to talk is about your tire pressure. See, tire pressure, how do you see a tire pressure is one is by your observing it. The other is by checking it with a machine. Similar, like I told you about the right gear speeds, all vehicles come with the recommended tire pressures. Suppose the recommended tire pressure is 32. Then at 32, the tire gives the right amount of friction to the transport vehicle. See, we need friction to move ahead. Without friction, however much you turn the wheel, you are not going to be benefited. So friction, like you have read in your schools also, is a necessary evil. Friction is evil because it is taking away the energy, but it is necessary because it gives us the grip also. No, the right grip for a vehicle is obtained at the recommended tire pressure, which is given in the book. If you are filling in more air, then it will lead to reduction in contact. That is, the tire bulges and the contact area between the tire and the road becomes less. That will lead to the slippage of the tires, which will lead to the wear and tear of the tire also. You lose energy as well as you lose the life of the tire. If your tire pressure is less, which normally happens, more is quite a rare case. Tire pressure becoming lower is a commonly faced case. If it becomes lower, then what happens? You will observe that the tire becomes flat. You will call it is a flat tire. Okay. There, the surface area of contact between the tire and the road becomes more, and the friction increases. We don't need so much friction. Like I told in the beginning, friction is needed, but up to one particular point. So when your pressure is less, the contact area becomes more, which leads to more friction, which leads to the loss of energy and loss of tire life too. And nowadays all vehicles comes with the radial tires. So the last point which I am noted on the slide is a superfluous point. Now, next point is when you stop your car or a two-wheeler at for some reason, either a signal or a gate or some obstruction or something. Now, you will be in a dilemma whether to switch it off or not to switch it. Okay. Now, there is a time limit in which it has to work. At the signals, you would have seen the time ticking at the top, no? The seconds, it starts with say 45, then it comes down to say 30, 15, and all those things. That is an indication of it. See, now go by this thumb rule that if you're going to stop more than 15 seconds, you switch off the engine. If you're going to stop for below 15 seconds, there is no point in switching off the engine, because when you start the engine, it consumes a fraction of a fuel more, because start needs a static friction to be overcome. Static friction is more than dynamic friction. Again, your school physics, what you have learned. So when you start the engine, a little amount of extra fuel is consumed. That fuel has been found that it is equal to 15 seconds of idling of the engine. So you just keep in mind about this 15-second concept. Next point is this: use the recommended grade of oil. By oil, I mean the lubrication oil which you use in your vehicle. How is lubrication oil important in this? Is lubrication oil is the one which acts as an intermediate surface between two metals, because there are many parts which are moving metal against metal inside an engine. So all this, without lubrication, it will lead to a lot of wear and tear. So this lubricating oil, it minimizes the wear and tear, and it acts as a cleaning agent also, and it acts as a cooling agent also. It has got three main jobs, and all these are done at a higher temperature. You just think the temperature of an engine is much higher, so the lube oil has to work at that temperature, not at the room temperature. Okay, so the grade of oil which reaches at the right viscosity at that higher temperature is the right grade of oil, which is again mentioned in the car manuals. So go by the car manual and use the right grade of oil, so that your resistance, the resistance inside the engine becomes minimum. The second point of what you can see on the screen, it says that engine oil that is thicker than the recommended oil causes 2% increase in fuel consumption, because the resistance to the movement becomes more in that case. Now, planning your route. What is planning your route mean? Suppose from one place to another you have to go and you have a couple of choices. Now, it is not that you have to always choose the shortest distance. Don't be under the misconception that the shortest distance only consumes lowest amount of energy. You have to consider the traffic, you have to consider the road conditions, you have to consider the gradients, and you have to consider the other obstructions which may come up. On the humorous side, if you have a friend who is going to obstruct you on your way, you just avoid that route and go, so that your time taken will become more. So the basic concept, what I am trying to say is that you have to plan your route thinking of the other factors also. See, there may be a choice where you may choose to travel 25 kilometers instead of 20 kilometers. But the route which you take for 25 kilometers will have only 2 signals, whereas the route which is there for 20 kilometers will have 5 signals. Then the fuel consumption point of view, if you are traveling by the 25 kilometers, will be less. So consider all those things. Don't just go by this factor for it. Then the next thing is the carpooling, and in your case, it is a two-wheeler pooling. Okay, so you use your vehicles maximum to the maximum number of people. Suppose when you go to a factory and you or join an office, try to pool your transport vehicles, trying to match the office timings also. Then the last point I am coming to this is that plan your trips. That is, if you have about say 4 or 5 things to do, plan your trips in such a way that you cover these things in a systematic way. Don't travel zigzag, up and down, up and down, up and down. Okay. Of course, your convenience is the top priority. Okay, just not only geography, but your convenience, the timings. Suppose you are to visit a bank which will be closing at say 3 o'clock. So you have to do some zigzag motions and all those. So, but take care of all those things, but try to avoid these things. So these are the dozen points which I talked to you about conserving fuel in driving. Next, we will come to good cooking habits. First point in good cooking habit is that is you plan the ingredients properly and keep everything near the stove. Don't light the stove and run around here and there. Okay, you would have seen in this cookery shows also that everything is available near the stove. He keeps it and then patak, he keeps on adding everything, and he doesn't waste even 2 seconds to find out where is gajar, where is garlic, where is this powder, where is that powder. Okay, so keep those things and then you start your work. See, these points may look very simple and silly and all those things, but it has been found that these points play a very big role in the consumption of the fuel. Next is pressure cooking. Use pressure cooker to the maximum extent because pressure cooking, it helps in reducing fuel. How does a pressure cooker help in saving the fuel is, as you know, when you increase the pressure, the boiling point increases. All the cooking is done by the boiling point of your water. No? So when you are using pressure cooker, this boiling point increases. Say to 100, instead of 100 degrees, it increases to 105 or 110 depending on the pressure or the weight or design of the pressure cooker. This extra temperature helps you to cook faster. That is how it is helping to save you fuel. Next comes using the optimum quantity of water while cooking. So on the screen you can see on the left there is lot of water which is kept. Actually, giving more water doesn't help in cooking faster, or in fact the taste gets spoiled if the water quantity is more than the requirement. So keep in mind about the water quantity and then okay. Then you have, for any burner, there is a high flame position and a low flame position. Okay, if you are boiling, if it reaches on a particular moment, reduce the flame, because after boiling is reached, giving extra energy is not going to help you. The boiling is going to continue even at a lower flame. So bring down the flame when the boiling starts. And if you are not in a hurry, you cook at a lower flame. If you are in a hurry, yes, go ahead with a higher flame and cook it faster. Next point is this: soaking before cooking. It is wherever possible, you soak the food items so that it becomes softer, because part of the cooking goes away in softening the product which you are cooking. So if you are able to do that softening by soaking, then it is fine. So this needs some planning. Suppose tomorrow you are going to have rajma means morning, you have to put it for soaking before night itself. Or if you want to have it for dinner, you have to do it in the breakfast time. Okay. So follow these good habits, you will be fine. Then next point is use shallow and wide vessels as compared to tall vessels, because the uh, the vessel which you are using to cook has to cover the flame fully. You should not see the flame coming out from the side of the vessel. The flame has to touch the vessel only from the bottom. Talking from the heat transfer point of view also, a flame cannot heat from the sides. Most of the heat which is from the flame is lost to the atmosphere if it is coming out of the side. Only if it is hitting the bottom, the heat goes against the gravity and it travels up and it transfers the heat to the food item which is being cooked inside. So use those diameters and those dimensions of the vessel to cover the flame fully. Don't let the flame come out from the sides of it. Now, the importance of the lid is the next point. It goes without saying, obviously, because you use water or oil to cook, and once it reaches its boiling point, it starts evaporating and it starts losing. This evaporation means it is taking away heat plus the loss of evaporation heat also, which is 540 kilocalories per kg. That much amount of heat is lost from the surfaces if those evaporation is not prevented. And how do you prevent evaporation? Is by using a lid. So use the lid to save energy. Next is the burner. So you will find small burner and a big burner. If it is a 2-burner stove. If it is a 4-burner stove, you will have 2 large burners and 2 small burners. Like I said 3 or 4 slides before, a small burner is enough for cooking. But if you are falling short of time, then you go for the bigger burner. And like I told you, don't let the flame leap out from the sides. When you use a bigger burner, there are chances that the flame leaping out through the sides is very, very high as compared to the using the smaller burner. Next point is cleaning of the burners. That is, if you see, how do you know whether a burner has reached a point where you have to clean? Is by the color of the flame. The flame color has to be blue. If the flame color is, say, orangish or reddish, or if you see some sparks coming out, then it means there is dust inside the burner. So this is time for cleaning. If you are cleaning the burner well, you will get blue flame, and blue flame is the best flame to give you the maximum energy from the fuel. Next point is the using of ISI marked products. So ISI marked products is, first thing is it gives you safety. Next thing is it gives you the good efficiency of burning. So though it may be costing a bit more, going for the ISI marked product only. Next comes cleaning of vessels. See, cleaning the insides of the vessel is not a problem. It goes without saying, everyone cleans the inside of the vessel. But it is very important to clean the outside of the vessel also, because if you don't clean it properly, soot gets deposited on the outside. If the burning is not proper, if you are always using a blue flame, then soot will not deposit. But sometimes the flame becomes orange or red, means there is a chance that soot gets deposited. So either if there is a soot on the outside of the vessel or there is grease from the inside of the vessel, both acts as a heat transfer barrier. And we are depending on cooking only by sheer heat transfer. So to keep up the maximum heat transfer, you have to keep the vessels clean always. Next point is this: when you are taking the food out of the refrigerator, allow it to come to room temperature to the extent possible. I don't expect you to come it to the exact room temperature. Inside the fridge, if it is say 10 degrees, you keep it out such that it at least comes up to say 20 degrees or so. Though the room temperature may be 25 or 27 or 28, whatever it is, depending on the time available to you. Again, if you are in a hurry, yes, go ahead and do it, because everything first your time and safety is concerned. Then comes all these points. But keep in mind that thawing of chilled food helps to reduce energy, because you start from say 25 degrees instead of starting doing it right from the refrigerator. Similarly, while keeping the food inside the refrigerator also, don't keep hot food inside the refrigerator directly, because it increases the refrigerator load. Keep it outside for some time till it cools by itself to some extent possible, and then you keep it inside. Now the last point of my slide comes the planning the meal, because try to eat together in a family, or when you are 4 or 5 of you are staying together, because that will help in reducing your the chances of reheating the food again and again. First thing, it loses energy, then it also loses the taste also. And if you are in a family, it increases your bondage. The family bondage is increased if you are sitting together and eating together. Now, there I am coming to the end of cooking. Now I will talk about home appliances. Now, where do you use energy at home is in cooking, lighting, heating or cooling, and all. I will cover point by point. These are the electricity guzzlers which I have: air conditioner, heaters, and fridge. I will cover point by point. The first is the lightings and the fan. So use natural lighting as much as possible during the day. Switch off the light when it is not in use. All these points you would have seen in the form of stickers and heard. Go on reading it and seeing it so that it keeps reminding you always. Then the third point is use LEDs, because LED consumes less amount of energy. But in some cases you have to have a tube light because it covers more area. LEDs covers focused areas. So there, instead of 40 watts, the normal tube light, you use the thin 28 watt tube lights. Use chokes in the lights and use electronic regulators for fans. Then the last point, I have not seen anyone doing it. That is lubricating the fans regularly. That is, fans, say after 5-6 years, it starts making noise because the lubrication would have evaporated. There, how will you know it needs a lubrication? Is by the sound, that crunk, 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 crunk sound comes. Initially, it will come at a frequency of, say, with a gap. Then it becomes closer and closer. So you have that closer. You have to call a mechanic and ask him to just lubricate it. Don't ask him to do anything else. Now, coming to air conditioner, use a voltage stabilizer, because your all energies are calculated based on the V voltage. So that has to be the stable, and it is a protective mechanism for the equipment also. Now, cleaning filters and coils and thermostat, it helps in maintaining a good heat transfer, because air conditioner works predominantly on the heat transfer. You are transferring the heat from inside to outside. It has got different stages. At each stage, it needs a clean surface. So you have to keep on cleaning it, so that your pressure and the temperature drops are not more. Then the third point is avoid frequent opening and closing. Doesn't need any explanation. Avoid direct sunlight for air conditioner. See, from health point of view, you are asked to take in direct sunlight. That is fine. But if you are sitting inside an air conditioner, avoid this direct sunlight because it takes away the heat. If you want direct sunlight, go out of the air conditioner area and then take it. Then keep an eye on the temperature setting. Don't set it unnecessarily at say 17, 18 and all. You need not shiver inside an air conditioner. You have to be comfortable inside an air conditioner. That is reached around 22, 23. So keep the setting like that. Then purchase star-rated models only. You would have seen that there are stars on all the electrical gadgets now. See, nowadays there is a 5-star means it is the most efficient ones. 4-star means a little less. 3-star is an average one. Cost-wise, the 5-star will cost you higher than the 2-star or 3-star one. But since you are going to consume it continuously, you are saving in the energy bill will compensate for it. The last point is the installation of reed screens on the air conditioner. Reed screens are some, in Tamil it is called vetiware. I don't know what it is called in Kannada. If you are putting that, automatically some 2 or 3 degrees centigrade of the inlet air falls. So that helps in conservation. Next is this geyser, water electric heater. So change the heating elements every 5 to 6 years. Again, I told you it is because of the heat transfer efficiency, and the heat transfer comes down after that. Then thermostat set at 50. Don't set it at 70 or 80 so that it has to come steaming hot, because most of the steaming hot in cases a large amount of heat is lost in the steam. So avoid that. It has to be in a liquid condition only, which is there till 50 degrees. Then put the water heater just before you use it. Now coming to the refrigerator, again this use of stabilizer I have already explained. Now check the gasket. Gasket is the one which goes around the length and breadth of the door. Okay. Now how do you check the gasket? Is take a paper and close the refrigerator with keeping the paper in between the door and the body of the refrigerator. And then after it closes the paper, you should not be able to move the paper. If you are able to move the paper, it means the gasket is not holding well. If there is a small gap in the gasket, you will be able to shake the paper or move the paper. If that happens, then you can reinforce the gasket from inside by keeping some paper or some such jugaad you can do. Or if the gasket has become so old, then you replace it, because that takes away the leak through the gasket, takes away a lot of heat. Then avoid frequent opening of the door. Then do not. The fourth point says that do not place it in kitchen or congested area. Yes, this means that the refrigerator should not be chilling all other objects around it. Okay, because if the room is cluttered with so many things, then whenever you open the fridge, all those things are getting that chillness. Avoid keeping it in a congested area, but we generally keep it in the kitchen for convenience. Try to keep it just outside the kitchen so that it is convenient too. Next point, it says defrost regularly, right? Because it takes away the heat. Ice which is formed, it takes away the heat. Now cool the food before putting it in the refrigerator. This I told under the good cooking habits. Then purchasing the star, more modern, goes without saying. Now, washing machine. So switch on the washing machine just before use, because there are so many other small parts, electronic parts, which is controlling the washing machine, which will be switched on if you switch on much before its use. All those things takes away electricity. Same thing, put off the machine after the use. And here the thermostat also should be around 50 degrees, because 70 degrees cloth washing is not going to be done much easier than 50 degrees. 50 degrees is much easier as compared to 30 degrees, but beyond 50, you don't save much. The last point is a very important point. Use it at full load to the maximum extent, because the water consumption remains almost same irrespective of the load of the cloth. Okay, this point is a simple point, but it is a very efficient point. Television next. It is the same point. Switch off the TV from the main, because there are so many small parts which is operating continuously. And nowadays there are so many accessories attached to the TV. Okay, don't use all the accessories always. Don't keep it on, because you may be using it for 10% of the time only. Other 90% you will be watching the TV which is getting relayed. So you be aware that accessories, it takes away heat. If you are calculating how much it is going to consume in an hour, it will be quite less. It will be hardly in some few rupees only, say 5 rupees, 2 rupees only. But if you are going to use the television daily, year after year, so that will get accumulated. The last point is, don't use it as a radio. Now, the last electrical gadget which I will talk to you about is the computer. Now, switch on the computer when required to be used. Same thing. Computer has got more electronic parts than all the electronic gadgets which we talked about. So that doesn't mean that you have to keep on switching it off every time. The second point says that avoid frequent shutdown. So the first point and second point seem to be contradicting each other. But you have to see how frequently you are going to utilize it. If you are going to utilize it continuously from morning to night, then there is no need to switch it off. You can continue, because each time you switch it on, it consumes a lot of energy. Plus, it takes away extra time too. The third point says that switch off the monitor during intervals. That is, whenever you are moving away, please switch off the monitor if you don't need the monitor. Suppose like you are attending this lecture, monitor is required to see the screen. So here and all, don't apply it. I'm talking about the cases where you don't need to see the monitor always. Fourth point it says is use black background. This may be an odd point actually, because the cells which are dark, it consumes very less energy as compared to the cells which are brighter, say light white or whatever it is. But for people who have got some sight problems like us, we are in the senior citizen batch where our sight is a problem, where we will not follow this, because reading black background is uncomfortable for us. But for your age, reading black background will be as comfortable as reading the bright background. So you choose a dark background for it. The last point is, again, switch off all unused accessories, because there are a lot of accessories nowadays which comes along with it, which we tend to keep it on continuously, whether we use it or not. Okay, I think I have come to the end of my talk for that, and I will just stop sharing it, and you can start your questions if it is. Stop presenting. Yes, I will just stop the presentation. Mr. Prakash, do you find any question in the chat box?
No. Chat box is empty. Nothing is there. No questions in the chat box. Yeah, one is coming.
Chat box is empty. Okay, so they understood everything over whatever we do have.
No. There's one question just popping in.
Good.
Sir,
Mr. Bhaskar.
People who want to ask the question.
sir,
Yeah.
limit the
Mr. Bhaskar.
Those who
question
want
out in the
to,
chat box.
those who want to ask the question also, they can unmute and ask.
Bhaskar, there's
Yeah,
one
tell me.
question popping up, asked by Mega Baliga. Great session, sirs. Had a doubt. Since
Yeah.
our landfills consist of mixed waste,
Okay.
are there any ways we can efficiently use this waste to generate energy? Or is it better to use the waste generated at the location itself, eliminating landfills? Yeah, I'll answer this question. See, you have asked, are there any ways we can efficiently use the waste to generate? Yeah. That's what I said, Ms. Baliga, that we are using this waste to generate energy. So the nearer the generating incinerator or the plant nearer to the waste landfill will reduce the transshipment of the waste again from landfill to the plant. But nowadays the generating units are kept closer to the city, so that from your houses to convey or to carry this waste is the time taken is reduced, and fuel consumption is reduced by this what you call this truckers. So these days the incinerators or the plant which generates electricity are closer to the municipal limits. So it's good that the locations are closer to the city, and thereby and the next one you said, is it better to use the waste generated at the location itself, eliminating landfill? Yeah, you're right, but the landfills are far away from the city because it emanates, it emits lot of toxic gases into the atmosphere. So landfills are away from the city, so keeping a generation unit there may also help. I think I have answered your question. If there anything else, you can ask. Any other question?
Sir, I have a question.
Please, ma'am.
Yes. So, sir, the refuse-derived fuel you were talking about, is it being
RDF.
used to? Yes, sir. So, is it being used to produce electricity in any other country right now?
Yes. Many countries are dependent on this. In India, there are 95 plants which generate this RDF. But as I said, it is very expensive. The cost of generating power is more expensive than the coal generating plant.
Okay.
So sometimes I think some of the plants which are in the north have shut down. And if you've gone through the newspaper just 4 days back, our chief minister had inaugurated one plant or laid the foundation stone for one plant in Birdi. So we are that will be generating 1.5 megawatts of power. And since the cost of generation is higher, there's some reluctance to put up this units. But in the long run, it helps because the waste is utilized and we can save a lot of land.
Okay.
Have I answered your question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome.
I would like to add a bit on this, that at present these are being employed from the environmental point of view only. How to take care of the waste, because like Mr. Prakash Rao said, the cost of generating is higher than the cost of the generation from coal. But from the environment point of view, this process is better and it is being employed now. But we have to reach a day when the cost of generating energy from this source should become lower than the cost from the coal generation. Thank you.
Mr. Bhaskar, there's one more question asked by Madhuvanti K.
Yeah.
Really learned a lot about how good driving can go a long way in cutting down on pollution. Thank you. Sir, my question is, how will following these guidelines affect road safety? How will following these guidelines affect road safety? you asked us to maintain
Yeah,
a
yeah.
speed of 45 kilometers per hour or so. How does this translate to highways?
Highways. Exactly. Good question. See, we are talking about conservation of fuel. Actually, conservation of fuel comes next to safety. Okay, so yeah, I think I mentioned about a dozen points there. In that, all the dozen points leads to defensive driving. That automatically takes care of the road safety. But if you are in a dilemma that driving which you are going to follow is going to hamper the road safety, then don't follow it. Follow the habit which you feel safe. Safety is more important than conservation. Okay, but like I told, the points which I said automatically takes care of the road safety. And the next point you have raised is how to translate it to the highways. Well, in highways also, as far as fuel conservation is concerned, driving at 50 gives you fuel saving, but it is not safe because when you drive at 50, you tend to sleep off. Okay, so that is not a safe habit. So don't apply it on the highways. But you keep in mind that driving at 70 and driving at 100, driving at 70 is going to save you energy as well as you are following the safety together. Yes, I agree. Driving at 50 on a highway is a dull prospect which leads to the other safety aspects of it. So don't strictly follow it in highways in that case. Okay, drive it in the long roads inside the city itself where you face. But you just understand the concept that it is because of the wind resistance which is playing an important role. And I find there is another question from Anurag Pillai.
No, Bhaskar, there's one more question before that.
Nice session.
No, there's one more question before that.
Okay.
What can be done? I'll repeat.
Wait, I'll just go.
Yeah.
So I'll read it out for you, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Shraddha.
So there's a question. What can be done with the plastic produced from petrol that has already been recycled 2 to 3 times from an environment point of view?
What can be done with plastics? Okay, see, if 2 to time recycle, that doesn't play much thing about the quality of it. If the process of getting the plastic is good, okay, this plastic will be as good as a new plastic itself. But instead of going it into the, say, landfill, it is coming to the useful part of the utilization part of it. So from the environment point of view, that will definitely help, because these plastics are nothing but non-degradable hydrocarbons. Okay, and if these non-degradable hydrocarbons are going to merge with the main body of the earth, then it may affect some of the natural cycles which is taking part. So to avoid that, we are trying to avoid pushing this non-degradable hydrocarbons inside the earth crust. So this will definitely help the environment. Mr. Prakash Rao, you have something to add?
I think what you said is right. Not only it goes into the earth and prevents, it generates toxic chemicals while there might be a fire accident. It's better that it is converted into, as I said earlier, into RDF and utilized for better source.
So there's another question by Anurag. Nice session, sir. How can we tackle the challenges to move from the conventional source like coal or petrol that we depend upon right now in India to renewable resource like solar as a mainstream sources?
Okay. See, from coal and petrol, we get all the comfort products now. Okay. Now, researchers are doing their exercise in trying to find alternative sources of all these products. Like I will talk to you about a couple of products. If you take petrol, we are depending on crude oil now. Now, we have started to try to get related products from ethyl alcohol. Ethyl alcohol, say from the agricultural products, basically sugarcane, palm sugarcane, molasses, and then you get ethyl alcohol, and then that also is similar to petrol, but ethyl alcohol is a very good solvent. So it eats away many of the parts which are there in the engine. Like there are so many rubber parts, Teflon parts, and all those. So we are finding it difficult. So we are not able to go beyond say 10% maximum. We are able to go up to say 7%, 8%. No. Combustion wise, there is no problem. From calorific point of view, there is no problem. But from the application on the engine wise, we are finding problems. So we are trying to solve it. We are trying to increase this percentage. Say from 7%, it will go up to 12% or 14% or 15%. Slowly, there will be suddenly some product will be found which is not affected by these alcohols. Then that product will be used in the engines so that your percentage of ethyl alcohol will shoot up from 7 to it may shoot up to 70%, 80% also. Similarly, for each of the products which we are getting from petroleum today, we are trying to find alternative. Like you would have talked about biodiesels, you would have heard. Biodiesel is going to replace diesel, which is coming. But today we are not able to do it because there are so many byproducts which are coming out while making this biodiesel that we are not able to handle the byproducts, how to dispose of the byproducts. Okay, so if you are able to find solutions for that, we'll be able to increase the biodiesel part in the diesel also. Similarly, for each and every part, like if you take plastic, if you take nylon, if you take your terylene, if you take your petroleum jelly, if you take your wax, all these are petroleum products. All these have to be replaced by renewable parts of energy. Now, which are the major renewable sources we are talking about? Solar, wind, and hydro. So we have to replace all these parts with these three sources, which is really an uphill task. Because pure energy, yes, you can get from hydro, or you can get from solar, or you can get from wind. But how about the specialty products? Like if you take a printing industry, to get the sharp outline of a print, you use a product called mineral turpentine oil, which is a petroleum product now. Now, you can't get it from solar. As of today, they may come up with some technology which using solar, they can convert an ordinary oil into a mineral turpentine oil. It may come, but the difficulty is in replacing these smaller specialty products, like the cosmetics which you use, the toothpaste which you use, all contain petroleum jelly. Okay, now this petroleum jelly, how to get it from wind energy, how to get it from hydro energy, how to get it from solar energy, if not how to get it from biosources. So most of the specialty products will be replaced from the biosources, because all bioproducts are also carbohydrates, which is hydrogen and carbon only, and oil is also hydrocarbon, which is also hydrogen and carbon only. So it is only the combination which we have to work around to get at it. So a day will come when we are able to get all these from renewable forms of energy. Hope I have answered, Anurag.
So we have another question by Savita. She says,
Okay.
was really enlightening session, sir. My question is, in Tamil Nadu, one person has used the waste plastic in construction of roads, which increases the toughness and also durability of the roads. Currently, these roads do exist. Why can't we use this theory for all roads? This way we can drastically reduce the plastic waste, which is non-biodegradable, and also increase our road safety and also avoid accidents which causes due to potholes in the roads.
Okay, fine. Uh, Here, we have also come across that is the plastics has been converted into roads. And now, our like Mr. Prakash Rao covered in his talk about the collection of these plastics and segregation of these plastics is a very important thing, which in many places it is not employed properly. Like in Bangalore, they are doing it quite seriously. You say if you even at your home you have two different kinds of things. Whereas if you go to Tamil Nadu, the government is not insisting on that kind of a separation. Though at public places it is insisting, but at homes they are not insisting. So for getting a road with a plastic, it has to be a good plastic types. It it cannot be any plastic type or a mixture of plastic and non-plastic and all those things. So the collection and segregation plays an important role here. That is point one. Point two is in a road, though road seems to be a very common thing which you see day in and day out, daily you see you use, the quality of the asphalt means the tar which you use has to be a very specific one because it should not soften much more than required under heat. That is during the peak. Of course, in Bangalore we don't face it, but in other hot places we face it during the noon. It becomes so hot that the road should not become soft. Okay, so this plastic substitution of the road has to meet all such specifications, and it will meet one day. Today it has started in a small way. An individual has done it and he has proved it in a good way. But scaling it up on a national level is a next point. But this topic is on. This is a very good input for replacing tar with plastics, and this also helps us to dispose of the plastic instead of going and getting stuck inside the earth. It is being put into a proper use.
So we'll end the question and answer session now. If they have any doubts, we'll be sharing your email IDs with them, sir. They'll contact you. Diksha,
Okay.
moving on to the
Okay.
vote of thanks.
So on behalf of National Service Scheme and the entire staff and students of Ramaya Institute of Technology, I would like to thank PCRA and the two speakers, Mr. J. Prakash Rao and Mr. A.S. Bhaskar, for this enlightening session. So, Mr. Prakash Rao, thank you for informing us about the refuse-derived fuel and how it can be converted to electricity and distilled water. And Mr. V.S. Bhaskar, thank you for making us understand the simple methods that can be used in our daily lives, like in driving and cooking and in home appliances to conserve energy and do our part for the future generation. So also I would like to add that these whatever conservation of energy, this is not only just for us, but also we can share this information with our close family members and friends so that they can also do their part in this. I would like to thank our NSS officers, Dr. Siddharaju sir and Dr. Putbore Goda sir, for always supporting us. I would also like to thank our ex-core team members and our seniors for their enormous contribution to making this event happen. And a special thanks to all our volunteers for being patient and asking so many questions. So thank you, and all of you have a nice evening ahead. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. This thing,
Team.
NSS wing of Ramaya team, the entire team, it was good. It was arranged well. It was coordinated well, and there was no hiccups. And hope it was beneficial. And we would like Mr. Prakash Rao was telling Shraddha, we could have more such sessions on some specific technical industrial applications too, for different branches like mechanical, electrical, chemical. These three branches, we have a separate related products which they will be finding useful when they go into the industries. Okay, thank you then. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you.